Hello everyone, my name is Bethany Steinhorst, and today I will be presenting to you the life of women's rights and anti-slavery activist Lucy Stone. To kind of set the scene here, life in the 1800s for women seems very bleak because they were presented with limited rights and opportunities, like how they could not seek a higher education, and the law, religion, and social customs endorsed their submission. For instance, a woman's property belonged to her husband, and he even had full control over their children, which means if he had any debts to settle, he could sell them off on the whim, and the mother could not have any say about it because he had full control. Now, on August 13th, 1818, Lucy Stone was born in West Brookfield, Massachusetts, in a farmhouse in Coy's Hill. When she was born, her delivery nurse told her mother, "Oh dear, I'm sorry it's a girl, a woman's life is so hard." Lucy grew up fearless, a good student, and a hard worker, and very quickly became annoyed at how she saw the way women were treated by society. When she asked her mother why this was so, her mother answered that it was the curse of Eve as to what a woman must submit. After hearing this, she made up her mind to go to college to study Greek and Hebrew in order to read the Bible in its original text and decide for herself if they were translated correctly. And since she did not have her family's financial help, she would often gather nuts and berries in the woods to sell them to be able to afford her books and textbooks. Now, unfortunately, her town school did not have a properly educated teacher, so she fought for her school to receive a grad student as a replacement. In order to further her higher education, she would also begin teaching in schools. At the age of 16, Stone began to teach in schools for $1 a week, eventually earning $16 a month. One school she taught at in Paxton, Massachusetts, was previously very rowdy, to the point where the former teacher was thrown out of the window by the older boys. Stone soon got that school in perfect working order. While she was there, the pastor letter was given out by the Orthodox Congregational Church. The letter warned against discussing slavery and women public speaking. When it was presented, Stone noticed that the minister was walking up and down the aisle, sneering at the women. She decided then and there that if she ever had anything on her mind, she would openly speak it. After about 9 years of saving, Stone was able to raise enough funds to go to college. The college she chose to go to was Oberlin College in Ohio. While Stone wanted to work her way through college by teaching, Oberlin had a rule against first years teaching in the preparatory department, so she asked her brother Bowman, a respected minister, to write her a letter of recommendation. Oberlin decided to give her an exemption to work in the preparatory department. Another place she taught at during this time was a school on the station in the Underground Railway. While at Oberlin, Stone became fast friends with Antoinette Brown, the first ordained woman minister. Stone, Brown, and a few other women organized the first debate society for women ever. These meetings were held in the woods or in the parlor of an elderly black woman, the mother of one of Stone's former students. For her graduation, Stone was asked to write a commencement speech, but since she was not allowed to present it herself, she refused on principle, and in turn, others followed suit. After college in 1848, Stone began to regularly lecture for the Anti-Slavery Society. It was said that her voice and eloquence made people pay attention to her. And in order to speak for both causes, she would lecture during the week for the anti-slavery efforts and on the weekends for women's rights. In May of 1850, Stone, along with Pauline Davis Wright and Abby Kelly Foster, decided that it was time for another women's rights convention. In 1850, the first National Women's Rights Convention was held at Worcester Finley Hall. Stone spoke at the last meeting urging women to become political activists and to lobby their state legislatures for marital property rights. Another activist was soon brought into the fold after reading the Tribune's accounts of Stone's speech at the convention. Her name was Susan B. Anthony, and she was a young temperance worker and schoolteacher. A couple of years later, Stone met with Susan B. Anthony and Amelia Bloomer at the Seneca Falls Convention in May 1852. Amelia Bloomer was a women's rights and temperance activist famous for creating the Bloomer pant dress. After meeting Bloomer, Stone began wearing the radical bloomers, often receiving quite the ridicule from her audience. In June 1853, Stone met her future husband, Henry Brown Blackwell. Blackwell had sought her out after becoming entranced with her after one of her lectures. After only 1 hour of meeting, Blackwell had proposed marriage, to which Stone rejected. Thus, Blackwell started courting Stone for 16 months until she finally agreed to marriage. Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell were married on May 1st, 1855 in Coy's Hill. Their marriage protest stated their belief that marriage is an equal partnership, and not wanting to lose her identity, Stone kept her last name. After marriage, her public activity began to diminish due to her marital duties, and she began to lose confidence. After participating in the National Women's Rights Convention in New York, Stone began to gain some of her confidence back. The thought of breaking up a family began to greatly worry Stone. She wondered what would happen to her career if she were to have a child. Alas, her want of a child began to outweigh her worries. On September 14, 1857, Stone gave birth to a baby girl. For almost a year, the couple bounced between two names but finally settled on Alice. For the next 2 years, Stone began to take a break from lecturing due to domestic duties and the demands of motherhood, for Alice became quite sick as a child and Stone was the main parent present. In 1863, Elizabeth Cady Stanton called for a convention to form called the Women's Loyal National League. During the convention, a debate erupted over whether or not to include women's rights to the agenda. To quell the commotion, Stone spoke out for the advancement of the principles in the Declaration of Independence. She claimed that in ignoring those principles, she brought about the war. During the years of the Civil War between 1861 and 1865, Stone only participated in the Women's Loyal National League's convention and the Anti-Slavery Society's third decade celebration. She claimed that this was due to the loss of drive to lecture. In the years of the Civil War, women had begun to expect a change in their legal and political status. Women had begun moving into positions that were once held by men. Public attitudes have changed to the point where the New York Times had wrote that if trained and educated to the same degree as men, women could be as useful as men. In January of 1866, Lucy Stone and Susan B. Anthony went to Boston to propose a merger with abolitionists. With the passing of the 13th Amendment and the abolishment of slavery, the anti-slavery societies redirected their efforts to securing black civil rights. However, abolitionists considered black suffrage more urgent and didn't want to jeopardize their agenda by adding another cause. And after almost 2 years of fighting for equal rights for all and seeing the way each suffrage was pitted against each other, Stone decided to focus on women's rights alone. In November of 1867, Lucy Stone founded the New Jersey Women's Suffrage Association. The association issued 2 petitions at the annual meeting of the American Equal Rights Association. The first petition was for the suffrage in the District of Columbia and Territories. The second petition was for a 16th Amendment. Sadly, both of these petitions were shut down. After a few more years, Stone quit lecturing altogether. After having quit lecturing, Stone went on to become an editor for a new women's rights paper called the Woman's Journal. She used the journal to continue to address suffrage meetings in state legislatures. Sadly, almost 2 decades later, Lucy Stone died on October 18, 1893 of stomach cancer at the age of 75. Thank you everyone for taking a small dive with me through the life of the great women's rights activist Lucy Stone.